Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thought I'd do a quick video about my maintenance I've been doing on my 996 C4S 2002 model, for all you 996 fans out there. I had a bit of an oil leak and thought it was the rear main seal, but it was weird because it was coming down from above the rear main seal, which kind of led me to looking at a few other things rather than going in, because I was going to have the clutch done at the same time. Oh, sorry, the garage doors swung open. Okay, I was going to have the clutch done at the same time and get it all done at Porsche actually, but started looking into it a bit more and thought, well, if it's not that, it's a bit of a waste of, well, probably not a waste of money, but because it may or may not need doing, although there's no signs of the clutch need doing, but I just thought while it was out and they're doing the seal. But anywho's, I was doing some research, looking into it, and so what I decided to do basically was strip the engine down as best as possible, but without removing the engine. So I dropped the rear engine mounts and supported the engine and dropped it down as much as I could, which gave some decent access above the air intake manifolds, etc., up top. And just started looking into it really, and then sort of got a bit involved and watched a few the dreaded YouTube videos, and I started removing a few things. Cut a long story short, got the intake manifolds removed, and there was a massive puddle of oil on the left hand side as you look at it from the rear, around between the, I guess, the secondary air pump and the AOS, sort of along the left hand intake bank. So I thought before I stripped it down it was going to be the oil cooler. So basically what I've done is I've replaced the oil cooler, the AOS while I was there, the coolant expansion tank while I had the engine dropped, because my understanding is it's almost impossible, well, it is impossible without dropping the engine, which isn't that much of a faff actually. I don't know, I think I thought it was going to be worse than it was, not done it before. So it was actually all right. Unfortunately my engine mounts were absolutely toast when I removed them and dropped oil all over the, well, not all over the garage floor, but they dropped oil, they're hydraulic oil that's in them, so they were knackered, so I had to buy some new ones. So so I thought I'd just give you a little video about my experience. I'd say the most important thing is just sort of take many pictures as you go. I mean, as you get in the engine, it's pretty straightforward. I didn't video it, which arguably would have been useful now. It's all back together and sort of being used, so which is good. But basically the process is take the airbox off, take the what should we call it, throttle body? Well, it is the throttle body. Let's take that off. Probably then is probably a good time to drop the engine. So you just need to support the engine. I did it with a trolley jack. The car was on the floor, by the way, but I've got no jacks or anything like that. Oh well, no lift or anything, unfortunately. Oh, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? And then just supported the engine, cracked off the end. I have taken the engine mounts off before on a previous 996 that I had, so sort of knew what was what. And support the engine, crack the two 18mm nuts off the engine mounts, and they're best to spend a bit of time trying to clean the threads, etc., because obviously they get all the road grime and detritus off various things. So clean the threads up, drop the nuts off, and then slowly, very slowly, drop the engine down, and basically just try and show with my torch. Bear with, bear with. Oh, what's going on? Yeah, if you look underneath the secondary air pump, there's a big coolant pipe which runs sort of over the bed of the engine, where the engine mounts mount to, and that's your sort of guide. That's about as far as you can drop it. You know, if you just keep an eye on that and make sure that you're not putting any pressure on that. I mean, I guess it dropped it about 4 inches, 100 mil, something like that, which, you know, makes a massive difference for getting at the bolts for the intake manifold. I mean, you would not be able to get them off otherwise. And then, yeah, it was just unbolting stuff really. The reservoir for the power steering, first thing to take off really. And basically just need to, I've got a small siphon. This thing, pretty grim, but it does the job. And yeah, just siphon it out until you've got as much as you can out of it, because then as you undo it, there's like a break in the neck, which is obviously holding fluid, because obviously it's the expansion reservoir, I suppose, for the power steering fluid. So stuff a rag under there when you get it out, because it's bound to be a bit extra in there. And then yeah, pull that out. A couple of little brackets, bits and pieces. There's the battery sort of jump start terminal. You can remove that, push that out the way, and then it's fairly straightforward. You can get at all the intake manifold bolts. There's 6 of them, 10 mil bolts. I mean, it is quite difficult to get the bolts, but it's once you get sort of into it, it's actually fairly good. You can get sockets on most of them. It's just the back ones really. Actually, you get sockets on all the ones on the right hand side as you look at it from the rear. On the left hand side, the rear one, you've got no chance of getting a socket on it, and you just got to baby it with a sort of a 10 mil ring spanner, I suppose, and just do quarter of a turn at a time, which is a pain because they're quite long threads, but it is what it is. And that does come out all right. The hardest bit for me, well, actually, that wasn't that bad. It was pulling the plenums out between the 2 intake manifolds, which I did before I took the intake manifolds. And I wonder if I'd undone one side, the right-hand side probably, of the intake manifold first. That would have made removing the plenums that much easier. There's a little vacuum hose on the back of the rear plenum, which just pulls off, you know, quite straightforward really. So once you've got all that out, intake's off. As I say, the left-hand intake is a right pain, the rearmost 10 mil bolt. But once you've started it, you can sort of get your fingers on it on either side. It's just a pain. It's not unsurmountable, and then that comes off okay, and that gives you loads of access to the. This is a C4S, so it's a Gen 2. And I understand the 3.4 Gen 1 is a bit different, a bit harder, I think, from inside the engine bay with the engine still in situ. So might be a bit different for that, but this is the Gen 2. And the AOS is relatively accessible once you've found the 2 bolts. But what's a great help is, I've got my old one here somewhere. Yeah, if you've got it's the old one. As you see, there's two bolts. And if you've got before you take the old one off, the new one's a great reference point, so you can sort of see where the bolts are and see what you've got to, and there's actually one very close to it which you think is going to be the AOS, but I'll tell you now, it's not. Yeah, just be a bit careful. But then once you've taken the hose off the bottom of it, it pulls up relatively easy. Then you've got, I think, four connections at the top. Around they will come off pretty easy, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, that was pretty easy. I changed the oil cooler. Still got a bit of cracking at this puppy here. And again, access to it was really good once we got to this stage. Yeah, just the only thing about it, it's got 4, I think they're 5mm Allen bolts to it's, well, if it's as it left the factory, I think they're 5mm Allen bolts, and they are, what I found with mine was they, 3 of them came off really easily. The last one was quite corroded, even though it's sort of aluminium, and it rounded off almost straight away. So I had to get a little tool and make a little slit in it and put a flathead screwdriver in to take it out. So it's a little bit of a bodge. And actually, I ended up, I don't know if you can, ooh, where is that? Yeah, I actually ended up having to cut the flange off the side. Oh, there we go. Flange off the side. Sorry, there we go. Which was, but as soon as I'd done that, it was loose and sort of hand tight, so I could undo it. So that was a pain. But I got a new, I got all the points there, all the parts from Design 911 in the UK, by the way, who were awesome, very good. Apart from the air intake gaskets and the O-rings for the oil cooler, I bought them from my local Porsche. I'm lucky enough to have a Porsche dealer within about 10 miles away, so I bought those because I thought, well, they're only O-rings and they're ferociously expensive for O-rings, of course, but I probably could have got the same size O-ring for, you know, probably a few pence instead of about £4 each, and there's 4 of them. But then I just thought, well, I don't really want to have any, well, might have issues anyway, touch wood I haven't, but you know, I thought it would be a bit stupid to do all that work and spend all that time for the sake of a few quid. I thought I'd get the Porsche ones, and that seemed to work okay. So the oil cooler went back on all right. That's a very sort of straightforward. I should have mentioned before you do any of this, is just drop the coolant down to below the oil cooler level, because you've got an oil in, an oil out, and a coolant in and a coolant out, and that's how it sort of cools the oil down using the coolant. So yeah, just the hose off just below the water pump, and just let it go until it stops, and I got about 5 litres out, something like, maybe a little bit more, and that was it. So yeah, so I managed to change the AOS, the oil cooler. Obviously ended up changing the engine mounts, which was a good thing really, because the other ones were absolutely knackered, and the coolant reservoir wasn't leaking, and it's an original Porsche one. Here actually, but I thought, you know what, as I've got it all open, I will it's a good opportunity to do it. I did buy a pattern one from Design 911, which don't get a great deal of good press, but the ones from Porsche are ferociously expensive, almost £600 if you're in the UK, with the VAT, and the one from Design 911 was about £90, something like that, and I just thought, I just wondered how bad it could be for, you know, a fifth of the cost. So we'll find out, of course, but so far, touch wood, so far so good. And then it was, you know, when it all went back together, just a case of doing everything in reverse really. My leak, interestingly, didn't seem to be the oil cooler, a little bit annoyingly actually, because I thought that would be it, but it seemed to be coming from, and I think it's sort of the equivalent of an EGR valve. It comes off it's connected to the secondary air pump, and also there's an oil feed also, and it sits between the secondary air pump and the air oil separator, even AOS, should we call it, easier to say. Yeah, that seemed to be leaking. It was really quite bad, and I think that was the root of my problem, touch wood. And I just took it all apart, cleaned it up, and replaced the gaskets, and a little bit of gasket in a tube smeared around there. Hopefully didn't get it anywhere near where the oil comes in and out of it. I don't think I did. And yeah, touch wood. They're all 10mm bolts, so very low sort of torque specs. I think 6 or 7 foot-pounds, something like that. But it's all online anyway, so just to satisfy yourself with all the torque settings, etc. So yeah, I suppose it was just a quick video just to say it wasn't awful getting in there, and I hadn't done it before. There's a good video from on YouTube actually for doing this on the FCP Euro site. It's a US site, and the chap changes basically the oil cooler and the AOS in 2 separate videos, but it's broadly the same job for most of it. So it's worth checking that out. I mean, I didn't video myself doing it, and I suppose arguably that would have been better, but my videoing skills probably weren't, probably would have taken months. And but in any event, I suppose that's my experience of this job. And yeah, if anyone wants to drop in the comments any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, if you're considering it, I'd say give it a go, because I didn't find out how much. Well, Porsche. I mean, I've joined the classic register, etc. I mean, the guys down there are fantastic, I've got to be said, and the parts guy is a legend, really. But Porsche wouldn't tackle the oil cooler without dropping the engine. And then obviously while they're in there, they'd have to do all sorts of other things at Porsche labour prices. So they had a sort of base price of about 1,500 UK pounds to drop the engine, and then obviously on top of that would be any other work. So it only took about an hour and a half to get to the point of replacing stuff by doing it this way. And obviously it's just the cost of the parts. So if you're half handy with, the spanners, and there's no real specialist tools in my opinion, just plenty of sockets and a few sort of angled sockets, that sort of thing, just to get in some tight places. But really, I mean, I didn't really need those, really. It's just 10mm, 13mm. Yeah, you need an 18mm to get the engine mounts off, which I don't think is a particularly common size. I mean, I did have one, but I mean, when you take the serpentine belt off, when you remove the airbox, it's I think a 24mm socket. And I actually did have one of those, surprisingly, because I've probably not got a lot of other sizes, but those are the 2 sort of weird sizes that you might need. And that's about it, really. I found taking the clips off the hoses, the coolant hoses, etc., and the ones on the AOS, a little small pair of mole grips. Certainly I'd call them mole grips. I don't know what anyone else calls them, but these sorts of things, this is what I used. These are actually quite small. I've got a small hand. If I had normal sized hands, it would look small. But they're good because it pulls the clip back and stays on there. So you've got two hands free to pull the hose itself off, which is useful. So something like that, actually, I think they do some like plier type things, which are specific for that use, actually. So it's worth having a look at. So anywho's, any questions, let me know. And yeah, good luck, give it a try. Let us know how you get on. See you on the next one. Take it easy.